Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Star Wars Starship Versus, a series where we match up 2 of your favorite Star Wars spaceships to see which comes out on top. And if you want to see the past videos in this series, I'm going to put a link down in the description where you can see the whole playlist. Today we're looking at the Assertor class Super Star Destroyer versus the Viscount class Star Defender, as suggested in the top comment of one of my previous videos. Now these are both legend ships, so this matchup might get a little bit crazy. So let's talk first about the Assertor. And like yesterday's video which featured the Bellator, this is another creation by the artist FractalSponge. The Assertor was a 15-kilometer long Super Star Destroyer and was one of the largest ships in the Galactic Empire's navy. On the other hand, the Viscount class Star Defender was a ship used by the New Republic. It was a 17-kilometer long dreadnought meant to rival the Empire's Super Star Destroyer. We're going to compare these two ships in the fields of firepower, defensive capabilities, fighter carrying capacity, and intangibles to see which one comes out on top. As always, I only have a few rules. The first is that these are one-on-one battles, so the ships can only take in with them what they can carry on board. Second, these ships are presumed to be controlled by captains of equal skill. Finally, we're going to be looking at the ships overall, so even if one wins 2 or even 3 categories, doesn't necessarily mean that it wins the day. Alright, so let's start with firepower, and we'll look first at the Assertor Dreadnought. There is kind of a little difficulty here, and that stems from the fact that the creator of the ship intended it to be much stronger than it actually was in the canon. And FractalSponge specifically said that he intended it to be stronger than the Executor class Super Star Destroyer, and about 5 times more well-armed than the Mandator 3, which is of course another very powerful Super Star Destroyer. And it seems like he also intended it to have a very small super laser on the front of the ship. He describes it as kind of a cleaned up, simplified, and more focused form of the Eclipse or the Sovereign class Super Star Destroyer, and he kind of says that perhaps it could have taken one of those ships head to head. However, none of that is canon, and the only actual canonical specifications come from the Lead by Example RPG guide. I should note, of course, that when I say canon, I'm referring to the old Legends material, not current canon. And that material places the strength of the ship actually quite a bit lower than an Executor class Super Star Destroyer. On the other hand, the Viscount had over 5,000 weapon systems, and its armament was pretty much equal to the Executor. So it's kind of hard to actually judge this category. We have to kind of go with the official canon sources, otherwise we're essentially just looking at fan fiction, so I guess the Viscount comes out ahead in this category. Next, let's look at defensive capabilities, and again, I think this one has to go to the Viscount. Mon Calamari ships always use very extensive hulls and shielding. The Viscount would doubly so because it's a dedicated warships, unlike some previous Mon Cal cruisers. On the other hand, we don't really know a whole lot else about the Assertor, at least in canon. We know that the ship's creator intended it to be a very powerful ship, and he says, and I quote, "Either way, the requirements for the mini super laser will entail a more robust hull structure and power grid than either of the earlier ships, and that feeds into more survivability per ton." However, we know that the super laser wasn't actually incorporated into canon, so it's hard to say how exactly powerful this ship was. So you know what, despite what I said earlier, I think this one should actually be a tie. Let's now look at carrying capacity. The Assertor would have carried about 120 starfighters. These most likely would have been TIE fighters, TIE interceptors, and TIE bombers. Although it may have had a few of the more expensive ships like the TIE defenders as well. On the other hand, the Viscount would carry hundreds of starfighters, and these would have included E-wings, B-wings, K-wings, X-wings, and A-wings, all superior to any TIE fighter they would encounter. So for that reason, this category goes to the Viscount. There aren't really any intangibles I want to mention other than that the Viscount carries a complement of repair droids, which could perhaps help it if it sustained any serious damage. I do also think that the true power of the Viscount is really exemplified by the defense of Mon Calamari, but I'll talk more about that in another day. Anyway, let's now look at the actual matchup, and I think by this point it's probably pretty clear how it's going to turn out. The Viscount was the New Republic's response to the Executor class Super Star Destroyer, and really, it seems to be better than it in most ways. I mean, the firepower is pretty equal, but the technology, the shielding, and the hull really just blow it out of the water. The Viscount also has air superiority. The X-Wing and the E-Wing are great for anti-starfighter missions, while the B-Wing and the K-Wing can really take it to a capital ship. On the other hand, the Assertor has less starfighters and worse starfighters, isn't as well armed as the Executor class Super Star Destroyer, and doesn't seem to have any impressive shielding feats. So if we're looking at the Legends matchup between the Assertor and the Viscount, I give it to the Viscount, and I give it to the Viscount actually 10 times out of 10. Now, if we were to talk about FractalSponge's original non-canon version of the Assertor, I think things would be quite a bit different. We know that that ship is extremely well armed, has a mini super laser, and just really is extremely technologically advanced and refined. That ship would have been a development of the Sovereign class and the Eclipse class Super Star Destroyers, and probably one of the more functional and deadly ships available to the Empire. That ship, I think, would beat a Viscount more times than it would lose against one. However, we're talking about the Assertor as it existed in canon, so again, this battle goes to the Mon Cal cruiser. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you got this far, let me know which you prefer, the Legends version of the Assertor class Super Star Destroyer or the fan version. Also, pretend you're working for the New Republic and you have to design a ship that is supposed to be better than the Viscount. What does it look like? How big is it? What are its main features? And what do you call it? Also, let me know what you think of my analysis, and as always, put the matchup you'd like to see next down in the comments. For next episode, I'll be taking one of the highest thumbs up comments and making it into a video. Anyways guys, thank you one more time. As always, may the Force be with you.